philosopher Daniel Dennett made a big splash with a book called Consciousness Explained, which, as you may have guessed, purported to explain consciousness. Not everyone thought the book succeeded. Some critics said it should have been called Consciousness Explained Away. In other words, they thought Dennett hadn't really grappled with the mind-body problem, but had just kind of pretended it's not a problem. Some even said they thought Dennett, in his heart, believes consciousness doesn't exist, which would strike me as a crazy position. I mean, I don't know about you, but I definitely have subjective experience. Or, as the philosopher Thomas Nagel formulated the issue of consciousness, it is like something to be me. How could anyone deny that it's like something to be them? Well, some philosophers have denied that consciousness exists. But Dennett, I should add, denies that he's one of these deniers. Anyway, my main aim today is to convince you that Dennett can't have succeeded in explaining consciousness in the strictly scientific sense of the word explain. Now, here's the category of things that science can explain. Publicly observable phenomena. By that, I don't mean things you can display in a stadium full of people. I just mean things that can be observed by any scientist who wants to look into the matter. If I'm a physicist and say I did an experiment and found that when I do some particular thing to hydrogen atoms, they do a particular thing in response, then other physicists should be able to check my work. They do the thing I said I did and see for themselves if hydrogen atoms indeed respond as I claimed. They replicate my experiment. If I did enough of these kinds of experiments and physicists checked my work and gave it a thumbs up, I could write a book called Hydrogen Atoms Explained. But consciousness isn't like a hydrogen atom. If I say that when I hear loud thunder, my consciousness is dominated by feelings of fear and awe, nobody can check that claim, because subjective experience can't be observed by more than one person. It's inherently private. That puts consciousness in a different category from all physical things. Now, I am not saying that science can't tell us anything at all about consciousness. If you run 100 people through a brain scanner and show them a terrifying image, and they say they feel fear, and the same part of the brain lights up in every case, well, that sheds some light on the link between brain and consciousness, between body and mind. Still, you haven't observed their fear, and strictly speaking, you have to take their word that they felt it. Other scientists can check your claims about what these people said, but can't check their claims about what they felt. The brain scan is measuring things that happen in the brain, physical correlates of a conscious state, not the conscious state itself. People who think about consciousness sometimes speak dismissively about mind-body dualism, as if it's a relic of a pre-modern worldview. And there have indeed been forms of dualism that seem hard to reconcile with the scientific outlook, like René Descartes' idea that this immaterial thing called the mind or the soul or whatever somehow influences the physical stuff called the body. But the fact is that whatever the relationship between the body and the mind, these two things do seem to belong in deeply different categories. There's the physical, publicly observable stuff, and the not physical, not publicly observable stuff. And it's the not physical stuff, the stuff that makes it like something to be alive, that makes life worth living. In my previous micro-lecture, I noted that science has so far failed to explain why consciousness exists. Now I'm suggesting that maybe science, by its very nature, can't ever get to the bottom of this consciousness thing. Pondering that possibility makes me feel frustrated, but it can also fill me with awe and wonder. And and you'll just have to take my word for that.